Hey guys, thanks for joining me again today for another episode of Perv Answers Emails. So today's question comes from YouTube, and the question is, Perv, what was the most severe case of overwork that you've seen? Can PE overwork make you feel like you have ED? And this third question, I think it's pretty stupid, but how to properly rest and recover from this severe overwork that's causing you ED? Well, to answer your question, I think that the most severe cases of overwork that I've seen, not only did it result in this gentleman being unable to get or maintain an erection, but there was severe, bruising and edema and just a real poster child for the concept that more work is not more work. More is not better, better is better. And so, as always, that's why we try to formulate these protocols to give you guys sort of the minimums and maximums of what we think is safe. In this particular case, the guy was just doing too much. He was doing, these manual warm-ups, and then he was, using extender on the concept of progressive overload. So he was just trying to do as much as he could as fast as possible, which is certainly not what I recommend. I actually recommend use as little force as necessary, not as much force as possible. So that being said, he would follow that work up with pumping using a heating pad. And then I think he was also, toying with which back then, this was at the onset of the whole vibration craze. So he, added that in for good measure because, normal overwork wasn't enough for this overachiever. So I truly felt, I'm not talking poorly about this guy. I really did feel bad. And the same question arose. The first question that this gentleman on YouTube asked was, what was the worst, that I'd ever seen? That was probably the worst that I had ever seen, because not only was there functional trauma, the inability to get or maintain an erection, there was, actual physical trauma. He had a lot of edema and discoloration. That sort of answers your second question, which is, can overwork make you feel like you have erectile dysfunction? Absolutely. But also, your penis being purple and blue and all of that can just cause you a lot of fear. And we know that there's a delicate balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, which is our fight, flight, or freeze, which is our fear response, and the rest, digest, recover, which is our sort of peaceful, relaxing part of our nervous system. And there needs to be a balance there, because sex is both arousing. It's it's a mixture of arousal and drowsal, and so those things have to be in order for you to properly perform. So that explains a lot of guys' performance anxiety right there. It's just like, you're freaking out because you're like, oh, what if I, do this or that or whatever. And it's like all of a sudden you go soft, or like you can't get hard. And then that just freaks you out even more. And it's just like a negative cycle, snowballs, and just, you're screwed by that point. So, to answer the third question, because the first question was, what was the worst? That was definitely the worst. The second question was, can it mimic erectile dysfunction? Yes, it can definitely mimic erectile dysfunction. You can overwork your penis to the point where you are not deteriorating, but you're desensitizing the actual nervous tissue, and you're compromising the circulatory system. So you may feel like you can only get semi-erect after a lot of work, or you may not feel like you can get erect at all. And Both of those are troubling enough that if you dwell on them, it may just exacerbate the problem, and it probably will exacerbate the problem. So, that being said, the third part of the question was how to best recover from this overwork. And this is a really easy answer. Don't touch your dick. Stop touching it. Quit touching your penis. Okay? Now, there are a lot of people that will, they'll say, oh, you can do light pumping for recovery. You could. The risk to reward ratio, however, on this is so little that, because if you're pumping, you risk exacerbating this condition and keeping this going, and you're going to build this neuroses in your head that you can't get erect and you can't function, and it's going to freak you out. So the longer that you stay injured, which I'm saying is a potential of if you pump, whereas if you just leave your penis alone, it will heal. Okay, I would say heat and ice are probably your best options. Don't go overboard with either one of them. Ice should be used for no longer than 7 to 10 minutes maximum. And this is for acute injuries only. The definition here, the medical definition of acute here being no longer than about 3 days. And then after about 3 days, you're in what we call the post-acute stage. The post-acute stage, most things resolve better with heat than they do with cold. Heat increases blood flow, whereas cold starts our body down a sort of response that we call the Hunting's response. And the Hunting's response is the first response is vasoconstriction. So your veins and arteries, they get smaller. But then about 7 to 10 minutes afterwards, they open up, and so it's vasodilation. But then you're on another timer before it goes into vasoconstriction again. And that's, again, why it's called the Hunting cycle, because it cycles through vasoconstriction and vasodilation. Whereas with heat, we are just encouraging the musculature, the smooth musculature in the arteries to sort of relax, lower their tonus. And so we're promoting an exchange of new oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood. I know that's really hard for some of you guys to do, to not touch your penis, especially if you're new to PE. And this is where you're really at risk to get injured anyways, is when you're new to PE. And when you're new to PE, it's exciting to do PE. And, the last thing that you want to hear is stop. Completely stop. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. Don't think about it. Just, go watch movies or do whatever you have to distract yourself. But it's like picking a scab, honestly. The more that you try to do to work around it, the more you risk exacerbating the condition. And so the best way to recover is to leave it alone. It's in an injured state, and it needs to be left alone. Now, should these issues continue, or should these issues be so serious that it worries you, I would be remiss if I did not recommend that you seek out help from a healthcare professional, whether that's your primary care physician or if you have an established relationship with a urologist. I am not a licensed professional here to give out medical advice. And if you asked me personally and said, I have this issue, I have this injury, what do? I would say, go see your physician, or, try to get a referral to a specialist. So that is my reply to that. Overwork is something that can definitely happen. It happens to all of us. I think at least once or twice, we'll get a little aggressive with our work because we're out here trying to get after it and trying to make some gains. And, it's just a part of the game that you've got to learn your limits. And I personally, again, I try to not even explore the boundaries of my limits. I try to do as little as possible to elicit growth. Do as little as necessary, not as much as possible. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. This video, of course, is sponsored by Massive Novelties, and thank you guys for all of your support. That's how I order my ramen noodles and, get my protein so we can be jacked and tan, because that's the dream, right? With a big dick. I'll see you guys later.